to our hardworking warehouse guy.
Thank you. The warehouse just hit 1.3 billion.
I'm 29 years old, and I've dealt with plenty of uncomfortable situations in my life. 4-hour board meetings where venture capitalists argued about pitch deck fonts, software deployments at 3 a.m. fueled by stale coffee and investor expectations. I even had to fire my best friend's cousin for using company servers to mine Bitcoin, but nothing prepared me for the psychological warfare disguised as a dinner invitation from my father-in-law, Richard Lansing. The call came on Tuesday while I was debugging an algorithm that would save our clients $12 million annually. Richard's voice boomed through my speaker with that condescension only wealthy men who peaked in the 80s seemed to master. Daniel, my boy, I'm having my quarterly business dinner at Morton's Steakhouse Friday. Thought you should meet some successful people. Maybe someone can help you find a real job. A real job. I'd been running data stream technologies for 5 years. 5 years of 16-hour days, cold pizza at midnight, and enough stress to give a monk an anxiety disorder. We had 128 employees depending on me for mortgages and kids' braces. We pulled in $360 million in annual revenue. Our client list was a who's who of national retailers. But because I didn't wear 3-piece suits or have a mahogany corner office because I preferred hoodies to ties, Richard had convinced himself his son-in-law was basically a glorified forklift operator. When I told my wife Emma about the invitation, she got that look. The one that says, "Please don't make this difficult," mixed with "I love you, but my father controls my trust fund." "Please just smile and don't mention your warehouse thing," she said. My warehouse thing. My billion-dollar company reduced to a thing, like building model trains or collecting lunchboxes. I wanted to pull up our quarterly earnings and make her read the numbers until she understood what her husband actually did. But I didn't, because I loved her, and you have to pick your battles. So I agreed to go and be pleasant and try not to embarrass her in front of her father's circle of self-important businessmen. Emma looked so relieved. "Thank you," she said, kissing my cheek. "And maybe dress nice, like business nice." That's when I decided to have some fun. If they were treating me like a warehouse worker anyway, why dress up? I was going to show up exactly as I was. Jeans, black turtleneck, and my best calm before the storm expression. Friday arrived. I stood in front of my closet looking at the one suit I owned, bought for my wedding, and laughed out loud. Emma frowned, but didn't push it. In the car, her anxiety radiated in waves. She kept glancing at my outfit. "You look casual," she finally said, which in wife-speak meant you're about to disappoint my entire family. "I look comfortable," I corrected. She sighed that deep, married people sigh. "Just, please don't mention data stream. Don't talk about work. Don't get into it with my dad. Just smile, eat your steak, and let's get through this." As we pulled into Morton's parking lot, Richard stood outside checking his Rolex like time owed him money. He spotted our car and his face flashed disappointment. His eyes locked onto my outfit with horror usually reserved for natural disasters. He looked at my jeans, then my turtleneck, then back. Like blinking hard enough might transform me into someone wearing a proper suit. "That's what you're wearing, Daniel?" he asked, voice dripping with disappointment. "Yeah," I said, adjusting my turtleneck. Didn't want to overdress and make the CEOs insecure. You know how fragile executive egos can be. His eye actually twitched. Emma grabbed my arm hard enough to cut circulation, marriage language for "shut up right now." Richard turned without a word and walked toward the entrance, shoulders rigid with disapproval. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood, low lighting, steaks costing more than weekly grocery budgets. He led us to a private room where I encountered what can only be described as a peacock convention. Men with $300 haircuts, watches that could fund small nations' healthcare, cufflinks with their own insurance policies. Before I could process it, Emma's sister Kate materialized like a designer-clad ghost, sipping wine with casual entitlement. Her eyes swept over me. "So that's your outfit?" she asked, voice dripping with condescension. "Yep," I said. "My other billionaire outfits are at the cleaners. So many galas, so few dry cleaners who can handle that level of fancy." She rolled her eyes so hard I worried about her optical health. "So embarrassing," she muttered. Richard started making rounds, introducing me like a disappointing science project. "Gentlemen, this is my son-in-law, Daniel. He works in warehouses." The way he said warehouses made it sound like a crime. The men looked at me with polite interest and thinly veiled pity. I could see their mental calculations, manual labor, Probably makes 40,000 if he's lucky. Poor Emma, marrying down. Actually, I said pleasantly, I build software that manages logistics operations, supply chain optimization, inventory management, route planning. Richard waved his hand dismissively. So, warehouses, he repeated. One of his buddies, silver-haired with an expensive tie, clapped my shoulder with condescending familiarity. Honest work. Someone's got to keep the economy moving. Can't all be CEOs. The irony was thick enough to cut with Morton's overpriced steak knives. We sat down at the massive dining table. I ended up between a guy who wouldn't stop talking about his Tesla and another checking his phone constantly. Emma shot me warning looks. The conversation started immediately, peacocking about golf handicaps and cryptocurrency. Gerald launched into a riveting story about shooting a birdie at Pebble Beach, describing the golf shot with more passion than most people describe their children's births. Then Richard, the Tesla guy, bragged about his Model S basically driving itself. It's basically a spaceship, he said. This man compared his car to a vehicle designed for space travel because it had lane-keeping assistance. The conversation ping-ponged between stocks and vague statements about market corrections. My phone buzzed constantly. Jason, my CTO, was sending deployment updates. We had 50 new distribution centers going live tonight, 50 facilities across 12 states integrating our software simultaneously. I pulled out my phone discreetly to check. Mason's update. Center 23 experiencing minor latency issues. Debugging now. Should be resolved in 15 minutes. Standard stuff. Nothing to panic about. That's when Richard's voice cut through. Daniel, can you not play Candy Crush at the table? The entire table went quiet. Everyone stared like I'd pulled out a flask. I'm working, I said simply. Richard waved dismissively. Oh, right, managing forklifts from your phone. The table erupted in polite laughter designed to make you feel small. Kate piled on. He's really passionate about his little project, emphasizing little project like a child's lemonade stand. Sophie, sitting across from me, chuckled. My own wife laughed at her sister's condescending comment about my little project. That little project had hit a valuation of $1.2 billion that morning. I'd gotten the email from Sequoia Capital at 6 a.m. $1.2 billion with a B. Our quarterly revenue was on track to hit $400 million. We had contracts with 3 of the top 5 national retailers. We'd been featured in TechCrunch, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, and Forbes. We had PhD applications from MIT and Stanford graduates wanting to work for my little project. I put my phone down and smiled. Yeah, my little project, it's pretty consuming. Richard, still riding his condescension high, offered advice. You know, Daniel, there's nothing wrong with warehouse work. But have you thought about getting an MBA? I could probably get you into Columbia. An MBA. Sure. Because what my billion-dollar company really needed was for me to take 2 years off to learn about synergy from professors who'd never built anything. I appreciate the suggestion, I said, but I'm pretty happy where I am. Richard jumped in. Daniel's content with his situation. Not everyone needs to be ambitious. Some people are happy with steady work. Steady work, right. Because managing a company growing at 200% year over year was steady work. The waiter arrived with appetizers, and I'd never been so grateful for a distraction. I checked my phone again, shielding the screen. Jason's update. Latency issues resolved. All 50 centers operational. Deployment success rate 98.7%. I grinned. In tech, that was basically perfect. Main courses arrived with the royal coronation ceremony. Massive steaks, lobster tails the size of small dogs, sides costing more than monthly utility bills. I was halfway through my filet when Marcus Bennett took an interest in me. He was different, younger, maybe early 40s, with sharp, analytical eyes suggesting he actually paid attention. He'd been quiet most of dinner, observing rather than participating. He set down his fork and turned to me. So, Daniel, what exactly do you do at the warehouse? Before I could answer, Richard swooped in like a vulture. He helps move boxes, Richard announced. Not glamorous, but hey, someone's got to do it. The patronizing smile was magnificent in its condescension, but Marcus wasn't done. And what's your company called? He asked, directing the question at me, not Richard. It was such a simple question, but it implied something Richard had ignored. That I had a company. DataStream Technologies, I said casually, like stating my eye color. I watched Marcus's face. His eyes widened slightly. His hand reaching for his wine glass stopped mid-motion. For 3 seconds, Marcus sat completely still, processing. Then, moving with deliberate slowness, he pulled out his phone. The rest of the table kept talking, oblivious to everything about to change. Marcus's thumbs moved across his screen, typing with focused intensity. He was Googling my company. I watched his face transform. First confusion, eyebrows scrunched, then recognition, eyes going wide, then shock, mouth opening slightly. Finally, disbelief as he looked up at me like I'd just revealed I was secretly a prince. The data stream technologies, Marcus said, voice completely changed. Gone was polite professional interest. This was respect, surprise, maybe awe. The logistics optimization platform? Richard, mid-sentence explaining Fed interest rate policy, stopped. What's that? Marcus ignored him, laser-focused on me. Your company just signed with Atlas Distribution, right? My firm was in that acquisition deal? You're the CEO? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. The entire table's attention shifted to our conversation. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Founder and CEO, I confirmed. But don't worry, I still move boxes, sometimes virtually. Marcus let out a laugh, genuine and surprised. Holy crap, he said, then looked apologetic for swearing. He was staring at me like I'd performed magic. The whole table had gone silent. Gerald's fork was frozen halfway to his mouth. Preston looked between Marcus and me with confusion. Richard had actually put down his phone. Richard's face cycled through expressions so quickly I could barely track them. Marcus, Richard said slowly, carefully. What are you talking about? Marcus tried to figure out how to explain without making Richard look like an idiot. Spoiler, there was no way. Richard, Marcus said carefully, DataStream Technologies is one of the most successful logistics tech companies in the country. They just completed a Series C funding round valuing them over $1 billion. We've been trying to get them to work with our firm for 6 months. The silence was absolute. Every person stared at me. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again like a gasping fish. $1 billion, he started, then trailed off. Dollars, I finished helpfully, with a B. Though technically we hit $1.2 billion this morning, so we should probably round up. I took a sip of water, perfectly calm. Kate looked like she was going to be sick. Her face had gone from confident smugness to existential crisis. I could see her rewinding every condescending comment, every dismissive laugh, every eye roll. But you, Richard started, struggling with complete sentences. I drive a Honda, I offered. It's paid off, gets great gas mileage. Crazy, right? Marcus was grinning now, full-on grinning. He looked at his phone again, scrolling. You're 29, he said, reading. You founded the company 5 years ago. You have contracts with, Jesus, basically everyone. Walmart, Target, Amazon, Costco. He looked up. How the hell did Richard not know about this? That was the billion-dollar question. I glanced at Emma, who looked like she was mentally preparing an apology speech. Then at Richard, who looked like he'd discovered his warehouse worker son-in-law was actually Bruce Wayne. I tried to mention it once or twice, I said, mildly. But someone kept calling it my warehouse thing, so I figured why bother. Then the universe delivered the most spectacular mic drop in awkward family dinner history. The TV in the corner, playing mindless sports recap nobody was watching, suddenly switched channels. I don't know if it was divine intervention or cosmic timing, but that screen cut straight to Bloomberg Tech. The Bloomberg anchor sat at her iconic desk, and now we meet the tech world's newest billion-dollar CEO. My stomach did a flip. The screen transitioned to B-roll footage, and there I was on Bloomberg television, standing in front of DataStream's main operations hub with massive digital displays showing real-time logistics data. I was wearing a black turtleneck and jeans, the same outfit I was currently wearing, the same outfit Richard had looked at with disappointment. The anchor's voice continued. At just 29 years old, Daniel Morrison, founder of DataStream Technologies, has redefined warehouse logistics, achieving a valuation of $1.3 billion. Emma's wine glass hit the table so sharply it could have shattered crystal. Her mouth hung open, frozen mid-sip, hand shaking slightly. Richard stared at the TV like it had personally betrayed him. He squinted, leaning forward. That looks like, he said slowly, voice trailing off. Yeah, I said casually. I get that a lot. People say I have one of those faces. Marcus caught the sarcasm and snorted into his wine. Bloomberg continued. Morrison founded DataStream 5 years ago after dropping out of Stanford's computer science program. The company now manages logistics operations for over 300 clients, including major retailers, Walmart, Target, and Amazon. Stanford dropout. Richard had given me so much grief about not finishing my degree, had told Emma at our wedding that at least he tried college. The segment showed more footage. Our offices with open floor plans and standing desks, our engineering team gathered around monitors, client distribution centers with our software displayed prominently. The company's proprietary algorithm has reduced operational costs for clients by an average of 32%, while improving delivery times by up to 40%. Marcus had his phone out, recording the TV screen. Several other guys pulled out their phones, probably Googling me, experiencing the same realization. Gerald just stared, mouth slightly open, ribeye forgotten. The anchor transitioned to funding rounds. DataStream has raised over $90 million from top-tier venture capital firms, including Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, and Benchmark. I could see recognition in the table's eyes. These weren't random investors. These were the investors. The firms that backed Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, they'd bet on me on my warehouse thing. Recent reports indicate DataStream is in talks for a potential acquisition by Microsoft with preliminary valuations exceeding $2 billion. Richard made a strangled gasp, like someone punched his stomach. He turned to look at me, really look at me, reassessing everything. Every conversation, every dismissive comment, every time he'd introduce me as the warehouse guy. Kate looked like she was going through 7 stages of grief simultaneously. Emma was frozen, wineglass suspended midair, eyes moving between the TV and my face like watching tennis. The Bloomberg segment rapped, "At an age when most people are still paying off student loans, Daniel Morrison has built an empire, one optimized warehouse at a time." The screen transitioned to a commercial. Nobody was eating, nobody was drinking. Everyone just sat there processing. I picked up my fork and went back to my steak, which had gotten cold but was still good. "So," I said into the silence, "anyone else want to tell me about their golf handicap?" I was really enjoying those stories. Marcus was first to break the silence, letting out a genuine belly laugh that echoed off the walls. He slapped the table hard enough to make silverware jump. "You're joking, right?" he said to Emma, pointing between us. "You're married to the DataStream guy?" Emma's mouth did that fish out of water thing. Finally, she stammered, Well, he never said it was that big." The defense was weak. I'd tried telling her multiple times, but she'd get this glazed look and say, "That's nice, honey," before changing subjects to her book club or repainting the living room. I leaned back, savoring the moment. "Sweetheart," I said gently, but loaded with sarcasm, "you told me not to embarrass you tonight. Mission accomplished." The irony was beautiful. She'd worried about me embarrassing her by being too casual, and now she was embarrassed for completely different reasons. Being married to a billionaire CEO for 2 years without figuring it out. Peter, quiet most of the night, was furiously scrolling his phone. "Bloomberg says you raised $50 million from Sequoia," he said, looking up with something approaching awe. "Sequoia Capital. Just saying that name in tech circles is like dropping the mic." "Yep," I confirmed, taking a sip of water. "They insisted on paying for dinner after the deal closed, but I told them I had steak plans." Kate, suspiciously quiet since the Bloomberg revelation, finally found her voice. She gripped her wine glass like a life preserver. "You never mentioned any of this," she said, accusation in her voice. I set down my fork and looked at her directly. "Every time I did, someone called it my warehouse job." The truth hung in the air, uncomfortable and undeniable. Then the universe wasn't done. Richard's phone started buzzing aggressively. He glanced at the screen and his face went from confusion to recognition to pure panic. "It's Charles," Richard muttered. "Charles from Columbia Business School." He said it with reverence reserved for religious figures. Richard answered, holding up one finger. "Charles, good to hear from you." "What?" "Yes, Daniel's right here. Your donation?" His eyes snapped to me, wide with horror. "Confirm the—" "Yes, he's my son-in-law." "Wait, what donation exactly?" His hand shook. $1.2 million for the Entrepreneurship Grant Program. "I see. Thank you, Charles." He ended the call and stood there, staring into middle distance. The table went silent again. Kate choked on her wine, sputtering and coughing. "You donated $1 million?" she gasped, eyes watering, makeup running. "Technically 1.2, I corrected. Columbia's doing great work with their entrepreneurship program. Needed funding for student resources, mentorship programs, startup seed money. Felt like the right thing." Marcus went back to his phone, scrolling with increased fervor. "Dude," he said, the casualness making it more impactful, "your Forbes 30 under 30, TechCrunch headline, Wall Street Journal front page. How did they not know?" He gestured around the table. Family group chats are complicated, I said with a half smile, the understatement of the century. Richard stood up from his position near the wall. He cleared his throat with theatrical formality. "Everyone," he began, voice carrying forced joviality of someone trying to save face. "I owe my son-in-law an apology. Turns out he's not just a warehouse worker, he owns the warehouses. Technically," I corrected lightly, "the software that runs them, but close enough." Preston leaned forward. "So the Bloomberg segment said you're in acquisition talks with Microsoft?" I nodded slowly. "Early stages. They're interested in integrating our platform with Azure Cloud Services. Would be a good fit." I didn't mention the proposed price because I had limits and also about 17 NDAs. Emma finally found her voice smaller than usual. "Daniel, why didn't you tell me it was this big?" I looked at her, the woman I loved despite her occasional inability to listen. "I tried, Soph," I said gently. "But every time I brought it up, someone in your family called it my warehouse thing, and you'd change the subject. After a while, I stopped trying." Dinner wrapped with all the awkwardness of a reversed high school reunion. The guys who'd spent the evening peacocking about golf and stocks were now trying to subtly ask for business cards. I handed out exactly 0 because I know what "let's grab coffee sometime" really means. The meal ended with uncomfortable handshaking and backslapping. Everyone suddenly treating me like their long-lost best friend. Emma went quiet in the car, which was concerning because my wife was many things, but quiet was rarely one. She stared out the window like processing the meaning of life. I was about to start the car when I heard footsteps. Richard appeared at my window, slightly red from wine and embarrassment. He made the hand-rolling gesture, meaning roll down your window. I sighed and lowered the window. "We need to talk." He stood there looking at my car with confusion. "You really drive a Honda?" he asked, genuinely bewildered. "Yeah," I confirmed, patting the dashboard. "It runs. Unlike your investments in crypto last year." Low blow. But Richard had spent last Thanksgiving explaining his cryptocurrency investment that was definitely going to be the next Bitcoin, then lost about 40,000 when it turned out to be a scam. Richard's face wanted to be offended, but knew he deserved that. "Fair point," he admitted, maybe the first time I'd heard him admit being wrong. "Look, Daniel, can I be honest, as opposed to all the dishonesty so far?" I just nodded. He leaned against my car. "I thought you were a screw-up," he said bluntly. "When Emma said she was marrying some guy who worked in warehouses and dressed like a college student, I thought she was making a mistake. The truth I'd always suspected." "I spent 2 years trying to help you," Richard continued with genuine conviction. "The networking dinners, job suggestions, introductions. I thought I was being a good father-in-law. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And instead," I said, finishing his thought, "you were being condescending to someone who didn't need your help." Richard nodded, looking deflated. "Yeah, I'm sorry, Daniel. Really. I judged you without knowing anything, and I was wrong. Decent apology." "I appreciate that," I said. "But Richard, you could have just asked. At any point in 2 years, you could have asked what I actually did instead of assuming." He winced. "You're right. I should have. You just dress so casually and you're so young and you never talk about work at family dinners." "Because every time I tried, someone changed the subject," I pointed out. "And I dress casually because I work in tech. Have you seen what Mark Zuckerberg wears? The turtleneck isn't a fashion choice, it's an industry standard." Richard actually smiled. "Fair enough. I suppose I'm old-fashioned. In my day, successful people wore suits." "In your day, people thought smoking was healthy and the internet was a fad," I countered. "Times change." He laughed, genuine. "Could I visit your office sometime? See what you've built?" The request surprised me. I'd expected more apologies, awkward questions about net worth, but not genuine interest. "You want to visit DataStream?" "Yeah," Richard said, looking embarrassed. "I'd like to understand what you do, really understand it." I considered it. Part of me wanted to make him suffer longer, but the bigger part that loved teaching people about logistics optimization was genuinely excited. "Sure," I said finally. "But fair warning, it's more interesting than it sounds. You might actually learn something." "I'm counting on it," Richard said. Then with a smirk, "Should I wear steel-toed shoes for all the forklifts?" Oh, he wanted jokes now. I grinned. "Absolutely. Virtual ones mostly, but you can never be too careful." He laughed, shaking his head. "I deserve that." "You really did." He stepped back. "You know, you could buy anything. A Mercedes, a Porsche, a mansion." "Why?" I interrupted. "My Honda starts every morning. Can't say the same about some people's yachts." I let that sink in because Richard's yacht spent more time in the shop than water. Touché, he said. Boats are temperamental. So I've heard, I said dryly. Along with crypto investments and assumptions about your son-in-law. Richard held up his hands. All right, I get it. I screwed up. Can we move past this? I thought about it and realized, yeah, we could. Holding grudges took energy. We can, I agreed. But I'm never letting you forget the warehouse worker comment. That's going in my toast at the next family gathering. Richard groaned. Great. Something to look forward to. Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking PowerPoint presentation, charts showing correlation between assumptions, and looking like an idiot. You're enjoying this too much, Richard said, smiling. I really am, I admitted. It's been therapeutic. He laughed, shook his head, stepped back. Good night, Daniel. Drive safe. And thank you for being gracious. I rolled up my window and started the car. Emma, silent through the exchange, finally turned to me. That was nice of you. Letting him visit? I shrugged, pulling out. He's your dad, and honestly, seeing what we do will be good for him. Expand his perspective. You mean humble him? Emma said with a slight smile. Potato, potato, I replied, and she laughed. First real laugh all evening. The drive home was quiet but different. Not tense, just contemplative. I couldn't help but smile. Tonight had been exhausting, awkward, and deeply satisfying. Got home around 2 a.m. to find Emma waiting on the couch, still in her dinner dress, wine in hand. She had that we need to talk look, but instead of launching into the speech forming behind her eyes, Emma just looked at me and said, I'm sorry. Those two words hung in the air, simple and unexpected. I should have listened, she continued. You tried telling me about DataStream and I didn't pay attention. I thought it was boring tech stuff. I didn't realize boring tech stuff was actually changing entire industries. She laughed sadly. I'm married to someone I don't actually know. That's pretty messed up. I sat next to her, still smelling like Murphy's Bar. It's not entirely your fault, I said. I could have been more insistent. But I should have been interested, Emma countered. Your work is important to you, and I dismissed it like it didn't matter. She showed me her phone. She'd been reading articles. TechCrunch, Bloomberg, Forbes, Wall Street Journal. I've been reading about you for 2 hours, she said. About my own husband. That's insane. Better late than never, I offered with a smile. She laughed more genuinely. I told Dad and Mom everything after you left. Everything I learned from Google, which is more than I learned in 2 years of marriage. Mom called Kate, crying. Happy crying. She kept saying, our son-in-law is on Bloomberg. And Kate? I asked. Kate locked herself in her room and won't come out. She sent me a text that just said, I'm never showing my face at family dinner again. Dramatic, I commented. But fair. Emma's phone buzzed. She gestured to it. Read it. I opened the message. Dad told Mom everyone's shocked. They're proud. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you sooner. I looked up. I mean it, she said softly. I'm really sorry. You deserve better than being treated like your work didn't matter. It's okay, I said, meaning it. You just married a walking case study in not judging books by covers. She smiled, real this time. I guess I did. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after surviving something weird and difficult together. So, Emma said eventually, are you actually going to sell to Microsoft? Maybe, I said honestly. It's complicated. It's a lot of money and resources for the team. But I like being independent, making my own decisions, not answering to corporate overlords. Whatever you decide, Emma said, I support you, even if I don't fully understand the technical details. That's all I ask, I said. Well, that and occasionally listening when I talk about work. Deal, she agreed. But you have to explain it in terms I understand. Use analogies, compare it to shopping or reality TV or something. I'll work on my metaphor game, I promised. My phone buzzed. Jason had sent a photo from Murphy's. The entire team crowded in frame, drinks raised, grinning, caption reading, the real MVPs with 15 emojis. I showed Emma. That's my team, the people who actually make DataStream work. They look happy, she observed. They are, I confirmed, because they're building something that matters with people who get it, no pretense, no judgment, just good work and mutual respect. Is that a dig at my family? Emma asked, smiling. Maybe a little, I admitted. I leaned back, feeling exhaustion finally catch up. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Richard's office visit, more media requests, continuing Microsoft negotiations, awkward family calls, but right now I was exactly where I needed to be. You know the best part of tonight? I said to Emma. Watching your dad's face, she guessed. That was good, I acknowledged. But no, the best part was knowing I didn't need anyone's validation. Not Richard's, not his business friends, not even Bloomberg's. I built something real, something valuable, and I did it my way. In jeans and a turtleneck, Emma added. In jeans and a turtleneck, I confirmed. Like a proper tech CEO? She laughed and pulled me toward the bedroom. Come on, warehouse worker, you need sleep. That's billionaire warehouse worker to you, I corrected, and she threw a couch pillow at my head. As I drifted off, phone finally silent on the nightstand, I smiled thinking about Richard's face the next time someone introduced me. Success isn't about wearing ties or having corner offices or impressing people at fancy dinners. Success is knowing you built something that matters, treated people with respect, and stayed true to yourself even when everyone thought you should be someone different. And as I finally surrendered to sleep, I made a mental note to wear my oldest, most casual hoodie to Richard's office visit, because some things are just too fun to resist.